Well, we had a few requests about what we should cover today.
That's not unusual.
That's not unusual, but the requests about what we should talk about is unusual because we received another death threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I say another because this has happened before. And it is kind of a scary and unfortunate reality of being a person that is like online. And we hear it a lot from the listeners, actually. They're like, don't read my name with this email.
Yeah.
Like they don't even want to have their name associated. They don't want to, they want to be anonymous. And I totally understand that.
Well, it's the other reason that we don't give full names, even when we read Patreon.
Right.
Even if you write your full name,
right.
We just usually give the last initial.
Right.
That's
and
another element of protecting. So people have to go through this shit that we have to go through.
Yeah.
Unfortunately have to go through.
Right. And so we got another death threat and we reported it. We're not going to give an update about what has transpired since making that initial report. Indicating
there are updates, but we're going to wait until we have more of a conclusion before we make updates.
Right. And we don't want to interfere with any investigations that may be happening. So, hang on for that. I know people are really wanting an update, but just kind of hang on for that. So we're going to play the threats that we received. We want to give kind of a warning for people that may not want to hear it because it is violent and vulgar. So I think we should play both of them in rapid succession. And if you don't want to hear these, what do they need to skip? Like 40 seconds ahead? 40 seconds about?
Yeah, about a minute.
Okay, skip about a minute ahead, and then you will not hear them. But these are the death threats that we received last week.
You fucking piece of shit. You're fucking dead. You and your family, motherfucker. You're fucking dead.
That's number one. Here's number two.
Your wife is an ugly fucking cunt. We're gonna rape that fucking ugly bitch. Kill her, you cocksucker.
So less than a minute, but
yeah. So
that was it. Left in at 11:19 and 11:23 on April 29th.
Interesting way to start the day.
Yeah.
So what's most concerning, and Jesse, I know you did a video about this, and I guess I haven't really had a chance to talk about my reaction to it, but I was most disturbed by the sound of what appears to be a child in the background of that second voicemail. That was very striking to me. I sent it to several of my friends trying to get confirmation of whether or not they agreed that seemed to be a child that you could hear in the background. And I think that's the most striking and concerning thing for me. And
the FBI seems to agree.
And so, yeah, that's definitely a concerning element. So, yeah, it's just a weird thing that you have to endure, I guess. And I wish it were different. And I know I hear this a lot from people that are online is like they get death threats. It's like a thing that they have come to expect of being a political commentator online. And I think it suggests something really toxic and poisonous about our society and the current discourse, that people feel like this is a legitimate way to air frustration or just comport yourself. I wish that it were not the case, but I'm hoping that, people who do this start to receive consequences, and that will hopefully get people to understand that this actually isn't an acceptable response to disagreement or anger or however you're choosing to deal with your emotional state, I guess.
People may not remember, but there was once a time in American politics where this type of behavior, these types of calls, these types of threats, these types of actions were universally condemned by everybody, both parties. It's not that way on the Republican side, but I'll get to that in a second. This is one of those deals where when I hear a voicemail that has been sent, a threat by some unhinged idiot, some violent jerk off online, sent to like Lauren Boebert or name somebody on the other side, I am repulsed. I am disgusted. I am very bothered. And I always think to myself, they're setting back the cause. They're not helping by doing this. They're harming. And I don't get, in fact, I've seen comments on the YouTube video about this where people justify this. Well, maybe you shouldn't call names. Maybe you shouldn't say what you say about Donald Trump, as though there's any justification to, and I'm not even talking about the name calling you an ugly fucking cunt and me a cocksucker or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the threats of violence and rape and death and murder. What the fuck is going on that this is acceptable by a wide swath of the American public in the Republican Party?
Yeah. And I guess in an attempt to inject some levity into the situation, I have to say that it's kind of funny the people that have been like, Britney, you're very beautiful. You're very beautiful. Don't worry about that. What's being said.
Right. Like,
they're
they
like,
need to...
we can't confirm on the other parts because we don't know you personally, but we can see that you are pretty, okay? But we also want to say that we've gotten a lot of supportive comments and a lot of supportive messages from people that have been just so kind. And, you know, like several different Patreon supporters have sent in messages. Kristen, Will, Austin sent in a very, very kind voice memo that was emotional to listen to, and it felt a bit self-indulgent to play it on the show because it was very kind and talked about, you know, the difference that you and I have made in his life and in other people's lives. And it was really, really nice. And we've just gotten so many messages that we really appreciate. So, you know, thank you to everyone who has reached out and checked on us and offered to be our personal security or
that multiple people have done that.
We definitely appreciate that. And Jesse, I was really taking hits on that Monday because it wasn't just the death threat, it wasn't just the rape threat, but we also got a message of someone who said that subject line was, "Please separate your show from Whitney."
Yeah.
And we're not going to read it, but they basically want me off the show. And I was like, wow.
They care so little about who you are that they don't even know your name is Britney.
They did. They wrote Britney next time. They mentioned me. But at first in the subject line, it was Whitney. And I'm like, wow, I cannot win today. That was my Monday. And I was like, I cannot win today.
I also love the rampant, I don't know why you don't want to read it, but the rampant internalized misogyny from this lady who just bitches about your looks. I don't like her face. I don't like her look or the sound of her voice. It's the same thing you hear from dudes like, she's just shrill, blah.
Well, people have, when you started your John Adams podcast with Ian, everyone should go check that out. New episode just dropped. Look at that. Little plug for you. People were concerned that your Dollemore Daily was changing or even that this I Doubt It podcast was changing. And I think because people aren't, you know, following you as closely as some other people that send us death and rape threats, that they don't understand like the different shows that you have. And so, you know, when she's saying, please separate your show from Whitney, this is a separate show from the Dollemore Daily. And it's a separate show from the John Adams podcast.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this show for 10 years.
Longer than anything else, this is what we've done.
Yeah, so...
That's what's interesting about this is someone to be such a super fan that they just can't stand you. They love me, but they just can't stand you. There would be no Dollemore Daily without I Doubt It podcast. Like, we wouldn't... That evolution wouldn't have been made at all.
Yeah.
So they're not listening because of your voice. Thanks a lot, Britney, to hear, but that is the case.
Yes.